I know all the folks round these arts and parts. Can't say I know you. Leastways, not yet. But I dare say I know what you'll be wanting. Some of the crack, maybe. A wee yarn with your sup, is it? No harm in that. Come on over. Warm yourself, I'll warn you, though. If it's the old Begor and Blarney shenanigans you're after, you'll not hear them from me. I'm a Shanachie, a storyteller. Looks like your story has found you. I wish it were another. But what's meant for you won't go by you. I'm sorry.
So here we are, Spence, in week 2 of our Cú Chulainn episodes. And a brief rerun of what happened last week. For those who hear it off, you should go back and listen to it first, because we started off with the day he was born to when he was a teenager, and a lot of things happened. We found out that his ability was like a Tasmanian devil, and he was able to wipe out hundreds of men at a time, and he was a demigod. So, without further ado, I think we should transport ourselves from his teenage years into his adult years. So let's start off, Spence, with we left Cú Chulainn last week training in Scotland. He was training to be a warrior and trying to control the power that he had. I mean, you know, when you think things can't get much worse, they normally do. So, you know, when the Irish hero was over in Scotland, training with Shaha, I can never say it properly, he fathered a son called Conla to her sister Aoife. Leaving to return to Ireland, Cú Chulainn gives Aoife a token, a gold thumb ring telling her that when her son is old enough to wear it, he should be sent to Ireland. However, he imposes 3 Giza taboos or prohibitions on the young lad, Conla. He cannot turn back once he starts his journey, he must not refuse a challenge, and he must never tell anyone his name. 8 years after his birth, Conla travelled to Irish soil to surprise Cú Chulainn. However, things didn't go quite to plan. Conla arrived into Cú Chulainn's home after dark. The startled Cú Chulainn asked the boy who he was, but Conla refused to say, as per the demands his father made of him. The two began to fight. It wasn't even a close match, but Conla nearly took his father. He nearly took him. However, Cú Chulainn finally caught Conla with the gebel, which was the spear I think he shot from his foot. That was that spear that he learned how to use in Scotland. And it was only as Conla was taking his final breath that Cú Chulainn realised that he had murdered his son.
Oh my goodness. Great tragedy stuff there. We'll talk about a doomed demigod, yeah?
It certainly is. And I mean, that sort of is that very Shakespearean feeling that you're sort of, how do you get past that?
I know, exactly. You're going to be, and there's stories that in his greatest battle that actually Conla returned in some form to deal the final blow. I think the Morgan would probably is her conquest of it, but yeah, what a story. So listen, it's as dark as they come, and that's pretty much what we have on him. His life as a child, his life as a teenager, his training to become this warrior, dealing with these warp spasms. He's killed his own son, so what a doomed figure. That kind of brings us up to what we would often refer to as the Irish Iliad, this pre-Christian oral narrative. It's been recorded by monks, handed down years and years. Everybody knows the story to some degree or have heard of it, but this is probably how most people came to hear about Cú Chulainn and this massive battle. It's got all the great themes, mate, we love. It's got war, it's got honour, it's got vanity, and it is the central saga of his life. So I suppose it's extremely hard to condense this down, but what we'll do, we'll give you a bit of a summary, and as always, please get out there and research it and dive into it because there's so much more. The main player, really, the main sort of one of the main antagonists or villains is Queen Maeve of Connacht, and she invades Ulster to steal the brown bull of Cooley. Okay, so like she's aided and abetted by this by her husband, the king, he's money. He's motivated by wealth and the love of conflict. So that's the scene. Queen Maeve wants the brown bull of Cooley, which is, of course, Ulster's, and therefore Cahulan needs to defend it. But a curse has been laid upon the men of Ulster, the mortal men of Ulster. They were all struck with birth pangs, Chris, intense labour pains. Can you imagine that?
Yep. Well, no, I can't, because I wouldn't say I could imagine that, because I can't imagine that. But I'm sure it's sore.
We're not allowed to say we come anywhere. Can you imagine that as a man, or we've made a sad fate as well as a husband or a wife. So yeah, imagine all these Ulster men struck down with intense labour pains, which left them unable to fight for months. I'm sure their women folk were saying, yeah, who's laughing now? But so because of that, the soldiers, the tribes of the Ulster men were incapacitated. They couldn't fight. But one man, of course, wasn't mortal. A one-man army who was hopefully painted the picture how powerful he was exempt from this curse because of his divine blood, son of the god Lu, with his immortal father and mortal mother. So he was left to defend the entire province effectively alone. So when they say one-man army, Chris, like they're not joking.
No better man.
No better man. No, why? Yeah.
If they were stuck with a one-man army and it was you or me, they'd be in trouble.
Well, a hell of a man for what, man? So how he done it? Because still these odds were seemingly insurmountable. He fought them to kind of hit and run guerrilla tactic. He would pick off Queen Maeve's scouts one by one. He also invoked this old, where did you get this, Chris? This old, I suppose, kind of tradition or the right of single combat. So he would invoke this right to take people on one at a time, a bit like a duel, maybe of some kind, or a gladiatorial face-off. So by that measure, then he was able to defeat the champion.
Trial by combat. I mean, that's very sort of Game of Thronesy. I mean, that's a reference, a sort of more modern reference. But if you go back, we were talking about the Arthurian sort of legends and things like that. That trial by combat is pretty much trial by combat. Is pretty much a staple of any hero's journey. A gladiator. For want of a better word, you're in there, and you're up against the worst of the worst, and our hero always seems to win.
He does. He fights his way through. He hacks and smashes and warp spasms his way through them all, mate. And then you mentioned them, I think, in our last episode, just one of the most iconic, but you didn't have any rivals, and we talked about that. It became what he called his heart brother. So I don't know if you want to if you think Cahulan's life couldn't get much darker given the loss of it, or more tragic given the loss of his son. Yeah, I think Chris has some.
Well, he does get quite darker, but I think we did mention him slightly about his best mate who he met in Scotland. Fairly best mate from his training days. Unfortunately, Queen Maeve manipulated Ferdiad, and she basically put Ferdiad up as one of her champions. So at that point, Cahulan had no choice. He had to fight his best friend. So the fight they fought over, they fought battle dogs. They fought for 3 days. At the end of each day, they sent each other food and medicine to help each other recover.
Wow.
It's almost, they didn't, I guess neither of them wanted to be in the position they were in.
No.
But on the 4th day, Cahulan was forced to use the gabalt, the old foot spear, and it killed Ferdiad instantly. Cahulan wept over his friend's body, lamenting everything was a game until Ferdiad came.
Man.
I mean, so, the internal conflict, I guess it's a story of duty over love. He sort of loved this guy as a brother, but his duty was to protect the people of Ulster.
Yeah.
And he had to choose one or the other, and this was sort of the doom of his life. His life was always, if the worst thing could happen to him, it's a Breaking Bad scenario where everything just gets worse and worse.
And this guy, man, his whole life ends by the idea that he's almost, for all his powers and all his abilities and all his strength and his ability in battle, he's at the mercy of these big powers of the evil Queen Maeve and the curse the druid that said, if you pick up arms today, you'll have a fantastical, famed life, but it'll be a short one. He's at the mercy of these massive...
And it's strange that he's as a demigod, he's at the mercy of these who were most likely just humans.
Yeah. I'd like to say that he passed away peacefully, Chris, under a starlit, lying in a field somewhere in the fields of Ulster.
Well, I mean, if you look at Ferdinand and the death of Ferdinand, I mean, the death of his son was terrible. The fact that he, you could look at it like he didn't know it was his son. He didn't know who he was fighting, and as far as he was concerned, until the very last minute, he was fighting someone that wanted to kill him.
Yeah.
But he fought for 3 days against the guy he knew.
Yeah.
There wasn't he knew. And I'm not saying he would have killed he would have killed his son had he known. I'm saying that he didn't know, and that's the reason that happened. And he probably didn't, he wouldn't have forgiven himself for that. But also now he's across the way from a guy that he's known for a good percentage of his life and, would probably die for.
Yeah. And to kill him. And Chris, not in a last act battle of a movie, but a battle of over 3 days where they were keeping each other alive with food and medicines. Awful. Just death of 1,000 cuts. Emotionally, that must have been, I suppose, make you get that gathering sense that things are coming to a conclusion for our hero.
With all this battles and these sort of fights, was there any other sort of gods who would be attracted to this sort of thing?
There's old nemesis, I guess, man, and we spoke about the Morrigan a couple of eps back as a way of setting up. This is probably where his last encounter with the supernatural, the gods of the world, plays out, because this is where the Morrigan and Cullen this is where the showdown happens. Well, their relationship is just something else. It's rejected love, it's supernatural battles, it's grim prophecy being fulfilled. And
let's
the death of a hero.
Let's sort of start from that. She, during these battles, and traditionally the Morrigan she's a goddess of war and death. So she's attracted to battle, she's attracted to death, and he is effectively at that point walking death. He was killing all around him. So it made sense that she was attracted to him. And I believe she appeared to him one day and basically offered her love. So she offered herself to him, but he rejected her straight off.
Yeah. And that was in her guise as a beautiful woman, wasn't she? She could shape shift.
Yeah, I think we talked about it. She could do it. She was an old hag. She was a raven. The raven or a crow. One of the two of them. It was a crow, maybe. But certainly when she appeared.
And why did he reject her? I'm just thinking, was there ever any reason why he rejected her? Was it?
He probably had enough trouble in his life without bringing in the Morrigan.
Yeah, you've been a little bit busy with the war, but you might have been a wee bit of, I don't know, misogyny, early view, or arrogance. I don't know, what would I need a woman's help for? She offered to help him in return for love, and he spurned her. And
I mean,
I don't need a woman's help.
That leads us on then, that leads us on to a woman who seeks revenge, a woman scorned.
Yes, yeah, they're all one to scorn, absolutely, because I think she found her vengeance at that point, didn't she?
Yeah, I mean, she's done some weird things, to be fair. I mean, during one of his battles, she attacked him by transforming into an eel and tripped him up into the river.
Okay.
And then she transformed into a wolf and stampeded cattle over him. And then she turned into a red heifer. I don't know what she did as a red heifer, but she transformed into one.
Tried to trample him, stampede him again.
When we did the episode, I actually thought there was only a couple of things, but obviously she could change into anything she wanted, really.
Yeah.
When it came down to it.
But it sounds like he was up for it. When she was in her eel form, he broke her ribs. When she was in her wolf form, he blinded her in one eye. And when she was just charging heifer, he broke her leg. Nothing was quite working. She tried 3 things, and all Cahull was up for
her. The other side of that was, she tricked him again. Because she turned up later as an old hag and she was milking a cow. And he unknowingly blessed her. She was giving him milk. So she was milking the cow to give him it, and he blessed her for giving him milk. And in that blessing, he completely healed the Morrigan of all the things he did. So she tricked him again. I mean, it's sort of he's a half demigod and she was a deity.
This whole hook, as they say, like he tried the physical frontal assault by attacking him and trying to weaken him in the forms of these animals, but ultimately it was just guile and slyness. I'd heard as well, Chris, one of the versions was, like you talked about in the earlier episode about these prohibitions and these taboos that applied to Conla, also applied to Cuchulainn, so he couldn't eat dog meat, he could never refuse any kind of hospitality. So the story was, another version of what you just said, the milk thing, was that she'd actually offered him dog meat as well by the side of the road.
Yeah,
And
I mean, that comes down, it's said in different ways. I think that certain legends say that it wasn't the Morrigan, it was one of his enemies dressed as an old hag.
Yeah.
But it could quite easily have been the Morrigan. I mean, you see, Cuchulainn's death really was a masterpiece of imagery, if you read it. It was orchestrated by the children of his enemies that he'd killed, and he had killed a lot of people. So it was led by Lugard. You say there was taboos, and the main taboos were obviously never eat dog meat and never refuse hospitality. So
yes,
he was caught out by it, because when he was offered the dog meat, he couldn't say no because he was refusing hospitality.
Trapped.
So he ate it, and as soon as he ate it, his left side withered.
I just think a little, Chris, sorry to interrupt, but in Disney stories, the apple, the poisoned apple.
Well, Adam, the poisoned apple.
The Wicked Queen appearing with the, listen, have some milk, have some food. And I think there was some indications that he didn't pick up on, that the cow that was being milked bore some of the injuries that he had actually inflicted on her. So there were a couple of wee signs there he didn't pick up on. But you're right, she caught him in a very clever sort of trap, a mental trap, of not physical. You say the social disgrace, and this, oh my word, very cunning.
Well, it broke his spiritual protection. So really, I mean, from what was said, that his left side withered. I mean, I imagine that if he was real in modern day, I imagine that like someone having a stroke.
Yeah.
And their left side be, I mean, that as a warrior, that really put him, it put him, let's say, defeatable. He became defeatable.
Yeah. And it wasn't Chris that he could retreat behind the lines for a while, because as we established earlier, he was the only guy fighting. Everyone else was out of the battle. So it was down to him, and here he was.
I mean, they made sure that they were going to kill him, because effectively what happened was, in the final battle, and even though he was injured from this interaction, in the final battle, he was pierced with a magical spear that would kill a king. That was about the only way they could really kill him. They've done damage to him, but that was about the only way they could really kill him. So really, as he lay down, he performed sort of one more magical legendary act. Do you know what that was, Spence?
I don't know. I'm just some weird reason I'm picturing William Wallace shouting fruit. I don't know, maybe last chuck on a spear. Did he take a couple of heads off or something?
He did a thing called the binding, where he tied himself to a standing with one of his own intestines.
Right.
So that he would die standing up facing his enemies.
Oh, my word. He tied himself to a standing stone with his own guts.
Now, and then lastly, his enemies were too afraid to approach him for 3 days, thinking that he might still be alive, against a standing stone tied up with his own intestine. And they only moved in when a raven landed on his shoulder, signalling that he'd truly gone. Now,
right.
Who do we know can turn into a raven?
Who do we know can turn into a raven? But the Morgan, isn't it?
It certainly is. And I would say that
she got him.
I would say that she is spiteful, and her spite killed the Hound of all.
Oh my word! And there's stories of It wasn't her washing the bloodstained armour in a river. He saw that in his final moments. So I suppose point being, he knew who got him. Do you know what I mean, mate? He probably knew in those last dying moments that this old lady, this washerwoman by the stream, washing out bloody armour, had got him. She'd outsmarted him. She probably could never beat him in a fair fight, but she certainly could outsmart him.
And in reality, he was probably, he was probably early 20s when he died. That sort of time. It wasn't, his childhood. This was so packed into, he was training at the age of 9 in Scotland, so he's probably not, he's probably in the prime.
Yeah, as we said, mate, I think in episode 1, where his whole life was doomed to be a fantastical and legendary one, but a short one. So he was a young man, as you say, and it's so much condensed, so much horror, so much battle, so much in that short time. So given all that, mate, why, I think it's obvious why we still talk about the story itself. There's lots of colorful stories. There's lots of stories about battles. There's lots of stories about heroes. We've got Viking Berserk. What is it about this story, do you think, that endures? Why have we been so excited to talk about him? In some ways, because it can't just be the battle stuff. Sure, it can't. What's going on?
Again, we're still talking about him the same way as we're still talking about the Greek tragedies and the sort of, like I talked about before, and I can't remember, I'll have to look it up, whether it was Theseus or one of those that were the son of Zeus. All these stories, they all resonate right across the world in different, we talked about Maui, for instance, who was, in a Disney film.
Moana. Yeah.
Which is obviously Hawaiian legend. I mean, I don't know whether The Rock could play Kong right enough. He could.
I was talking Michael Fassbender in a movie not many years ago, but a few years ago. Never happened.
Yeah, I always envision him as built like The Rock, but about the height of Danny DeVito.
Yeah, we squat. Yeah, that we maybe didn't touch on. Stories vary greatly about how he looked. I heard he had wild, red, frizzy hair and quite a squat little figure. And other versions, of course, if you say me, I had a Rock-esque. Goodness, who knows?
I don't know. I mean,
I can fight.
You wonder why. There's been rumors over the years. There's some short films, particularly the cattle raid of. There's been sort of animations and stuff, but nobody has made an actual film of Kong. And
no,
it's hard to say why. If I guessed it, I would say that it's very Shakespearean in terms of, murdering your own son, having to kill your best friend, then you spurn the love of a god who basically then does you over,
Yeah.
It's sort of it's not a straight action movie, if you know what I mean. It's not.
No, it's not Braveheart, for instance, a hero leading.
I mean, you could
put a
license on and do something, like that. But I mean, if you're looking at, it's a Titus Andronicus, the Shakespearean play where he gets the guy's kids and he murders them, and then he serves them up when they come to dinner. He invites the other king, to a peace dinner, and the peace dinner turns out to be the other king's kids.
Yeah,
and that sort of thing. Like, I mean, you go and see that as a play. I don't know whether Titus Andronicus is done very much now. It still is done, but I don't know if it's done very much. But it's not the type of thing people want to see on film.
No,
it's not the type of thing they are. So I think you would have to really give it the Lord of the Rings treatment if you were putting it together now.
I suppose what would attract me to it, if somebody were to say he's not your clean-cut hero. There's extremes, there's light, there's dark. He can't control his own rage, for instance. He has his own people were afraid of him, had to put him in water to cool him down. And there's extremes there. There's that kind of primal side of him. But then there's this nobility about him as well. The fact that he chose this short life over a long, quiet life. Anybody who's ever, I remember somebody saying that along the lines of, anybody who's ever had an ambition to shine bright and do something wonderful, he's that. Yeah, I'm not going to live an ordinary life. I'm going to live a short, fantastical life, and he did.
Pretty much. I mean, in honor of the new Highlander remake, it's better to burn out and fade away. So what's the line?
It's better to burn out than it is to rust.
Yeah,
because they're young. I think.
But that sort of scenario where he burned bright for
Yeah.
20 years. I guess he's remembered because I think it's the same way as any other demigod or thing. It's oral history.
Yeah.
And I think when you're looking at sort of from the Irish side, the Shanachie, the storyteller, the guy who sits in front of the fire in the bar and tells the stories while you're having a pint and he's having a these stories that progress through time and change with time, like Chinese whispers, him being a good fighter could turn into him being a demigod. These things sort of change through history.
And that whole thing, Christy, with that primal side of him, the beast, the human and the beast, we can all relate to that, that uncontrollable, whatever that is, that part of instinct that's in all of us. And you can say he's a bit of a precursor to your old Norse berserkers and the Hulk and
certainly,
the guy from Moana.
Obviously these are myths and legends, and there's no evidence that this guy ever did exist in any way. But when you look at people like him, it's almost like they go through life with a death wish, and they're not afraid of death, and they're not afraid of dying, and they just go forward. And from modern day soldiers who just run at the checkpoint, to back to them where they're, I always remember that. I don't know, you haven't seen all of Game of Thrones, but there's a fantastic episode called Battle of the Bastards. And it's Battle of the Bastards because there's two bastard sons, effectively, that are fighting each other.
Yeah.
And it's a big, big battle. And there's one scene where one guy is sort of standing with his sword out, and there's just a line of like a couple of hundred sort of guys on horseback, and he's on his own. And, I'm not going to say whether he survived it or not, but it doesn't matter because I don't want to. But the bottom line is, when you have a story like that, if he did survive, well, all of a sudden you've got Superman standing, you know what I mean? And it isn't necessarily Superman. He could have survived by pure luck.
Of course. Yeah.
But the fact is, somebody behind him is going, he stood there and he put the sword up, and, and he ventured forward when this line of horses was coming towards him. And then at the end of the day, he walked out of the battle. And you sort of go, well, the guy's a fucking god.
Yeah.
So it's, and that progresses through.
People are attracted to that.
And I think one of the best.
They want a hero.
People want to think they're on the right side.
Everything you should say that, man, because we'll tend to talk about politics on this show. But in Irish history, which, anyone with a sort of passing knowledge of Ireland, Northern Ireland, there's obviously been the troubles between your republicanism and nationalism and loyalism and Britishness and all that. Cahul appears on murals on both sides of the community. So, during the 1916 Easter Rising, he became a symbol of rebellion. There's a statue of him which represents blood sacrifice in the GPO of Dublin. But also, he is a defender of Ulster. He's a defender of the Ulstermen against the rest of Ireland. So they have adopted him as a defender of specific territory as well. As you say, because a guy whose story has been handed down orally is now painted on the gables of some houses in different parts of the city, and both people find something in his story, both sides, or both traditions, maybe is a better word, find something in his story they can relate to today. Which, wow. So talking about burning bright, short life, but
yeah, I mean,
and
also the Morrigan. I remember a long time ago that we had pulled together a film we were going to do about the Morrigan, and we got contacted by a group in the US who basically were the Church of the Morrigan.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
And they were asking us to tell them what we were doing with the film because they didn't want their deity. They didn't want their deity to be seen as bad in any way. And that's sort of, I was amazed when they actually contacted us. I didn't tell them what it was doing, but they contacted us that, globally,
reverence.
Globally, there's a church out there that worships the Morrigan. And, it's one of those things where I think legends never, especially with the US, because the US, in terms of America as a country, it's quite young. When we're talking when Colin was around and all the way back, it's over there doing its own thing because nobody had ever seen maybe, the Vikings supposedly had got there and stuff, but it almost had in America, your myths and legends have been bought in. We talked about the Headless Horseman, the Dutch, the Germans sort of bought that into the state.
Yes,
You know,
and some links to Wales and Cornwall. All is that right? Well, all
yeah,
these
and
different
there
things
was
come together.
it all sort of bought that to the States. There are other, there's other different things that have been adopted into the States. I mean, one of the things that they sort of take on board, and I think I talked to you about it before, Spence, whether we're going to do it or not on lists. And cryptid is a better word. So,
Yes.
whether we do cryptid somewhere down the line, maybe we will, maybe we won't.
Yeah, let's see if there's any
But certainly,
basis for that in mythology.
it's interesting, and we've covered quite a lot, and I'm sure there's a few more stories that are going to, that people are going to really like coming up. But I definitely think that one thing I found, and I think you've found it too, is how these legends resonate globally.
Yeah.
And how, we could be doing, I was going to say American Gothic, but that's a name of a picture, isn't it? That's the name of but we could be doing American Gothic or Japanese Gothic or Russian Gothic. But what you would find is in certain legends, you'd see the opposite somewhere else.
Yes.
We found
A different kind of look and feel and tradition.
I guess the one that comes to mind was the Doulahan, because the Headless Horseman, there was a Japanese version, and there was all these different versions, and I imagine, there's plenty of different versions you could call them. I mean, tonight we sort of named the Hawaiian version, and and it's really interesting how these words, that are so far apart, say Ireland and Hawaii, before anyone was sailing between them, came up with the same oral legends.
I suppose, mate, as we talked a little bit when we talked about the Doulahan, the imagery changes, the tradition, the setting, the names. But I suppose the reason for why the stories exist in our psyches are probably the same, because the people in Mexico and the people in Japan are struggling with the same fears and the same worries and the same stresses, trying to make sense of the world. Do you know what I mean? So these stories, it's amazing how they sit, because I think the home key for all the stories is the same. It's just how that gets expressed in culture is different, which makes it it's a kind of unique. It's a whole weird way.
We talked in some of the other episodes about how it's reflected. Don't go near the water; the monster's going to get you. When it comes to something like Cú Chulainn, it's probably that when you need a hero, there'll be someone there.
Yeah,
but that what's that thing that his uncle says to him in Spider-Man? Is it Spider-Man with great power comes great responsibility?
Great responsibility, yeah. But he's definitely, man, someone who, as you rightly said, we'll probably do a couple of wee bite-sized about him as well. There'll be other little stories and little one-off stories we can do. But for a guy who burned bright for a short time, I'd love looking into it.
And also, is there plenty of books on the in terms of? I know that a lot of the books that we had, there's definitely books that I have read about the big battles. Certainly books about that.
There's things in pop culture, apparently, even way back for that, Yeats and Lady Gregory apparently revitalised this myth during the whole Irish literary revival. So he was brought back to the surface again during that. He pops up in these forms, as you talk about Marvel comics, you will have versions of them. There's heavy metal songs, I think.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I did see something in there. There was a version of them called with AD 2000 AD.
2000 AD. I wonder if I have. Oh no, I don't. I read 2000 AD as a kid, and there was a character in that. It's called. He has a
Barbarian.
I think he'd been cast out or something. Yeah, Celtic barbarian. Exactly that man. He just wandered around. He didn't have the spear. He had an axe called Brainbiter, and he had a little kind of orc type mischievous dwarf that followed him around and got him into more trouble than enough a bit. And the ugly from the good, the bad, Warlock and Clint, just old creature that followed him around. But he in that
that fantastic Mexican that was played by a Jewish man. That was played, UK was brilliant, and absolutely.
I just watched a bit of it the other night. I couldn't turn it off. And again, that was a really on the nose version of this legend, because he It was one of, I think it was one of the standout stories from 2018, really, apart from Mr. Judge Dredd himself, obviously. But it's, God, I forgot about him. It's all still in there.
So I think that it's definitely worth, if you're interested at all in Irish myth and legend, it's definitely worth looking into them. We have skipped over certain things like you're saying about the bite size. There's tons of little stories. It's almost his story. There are some big parts of his legend, but there are plenty of little bits, little bites of he did this and this happened to him, and we've sort of stuck to the big plot points, as we say in the film. But we've stuck to the big plot points. But yeah, he had a very full life actually with fighting, because he loved a good fight.
Absolutely, but rule on the movie, I say.
That's it. So, us to this week, Spence, and we shall be back very soon with a fantastic new episode. We're hoping to do. I think we're now in the third.
Got a couple of contenders, mate. Don't we have a few?
We're hoping to do at least another 3 or 4 episodes this season. I know that we were a bit sparse last year, and things were happening and we couldn't get stuff. And now, obviously, the second episode that we've done, that will be visually on YouTube. So people get to see what we look like. We promise that we're going to try and get sort of AI face cover things to make us look better.
Yes, so swanky background or something.
We're going to put a swanky background. For some reason, mine's blurry. You can see like an alien thing, but mine is blurry. I'm going to sort that out for next time around. But yeah.
I've lots of wee bite-sized, Chris. There's a few wee bite-sized episodes that will be coming folks' way. We'll release a few of them.
Yeah. So if you're listening to the audio version, that's great. You can go over to YouTube. You can listen to the audio version there, but you can also see the new visual versions, which started with episode 1 of Cú Chulainn, and now we're in episode 2. So going forward, we're hoping to put up more visual. We're hoping to get more. This is a labour of love for Spence and myself. So we're hoping we'll get better as we go along.
Especially a couple of guests. We were thinking we've met a couple of really interesting.
We've got a couple of guests.
Too much of a dab.
We've got a couple of guests that we're going to bring in towards the end of the season to give us some historical viewpoints and some other interesting stories from myth and legend around Northern Ireland and Ireland itself. So
no shortage of them, mate.
And yeah, we're hoping to have some great new stories coming your way.
Look forward to it.
Good luck and catch you later.
No need to look so scared, eh? Enjoy the fire. Have a sup. Sure. Isn't it all just Irish Gothic? All just Irish Gothic.
Why not check out the other podcasts in the Causeway network? Hostage to the Devil, which deals with exorcism, and Unknown Skies, our new UFO podcast. You can find them on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information, check out our Instagram, Irish Gothic Pod, and we also have X, which is Irish Gothic Pod. To help the podcast, please give us 5 stars wherever you listen or watch. It really helps us out.